Welcome to Doing It My Way by Beata Matras, a podcast about project and product management, communication, brand, and IT. All these topics will definitely improve and have a positive impact on your career. So join me today, subscribe, and expect a new episode every week. Thank you. Today I'm joined by Jurgen Appelo, a leader in agility, innovation, and modern leadership. He's describing himself as slightly anarchistic, autistic, and eccentric, and Jurgen's unique approach has transformed the organization's function in the 21st century. Jurgen helps companies drive continuous innovation and create better human experiences. He's also the author of best-selling books like Management 3.0 and Managing for Happiness, and his latest work includes science fiction novel Glitches of Gods. Jurgen is a true advocate for modern leadership, and he's here today to share his insights on how organizations can thrive in today's fast-changing world. Hello, Jurgen. I'm glad you accepted my invite.
Hello, Beata. It's great to be here.
Jurgen, you have fascinating background that combines leadership, agility, innovation, and even like creative writing. Could you share with our listeners how your journey began and what inspired you to focus on leadership, innovation, and creativity?
Well, I have always been a generalist, I have discovered about myself, because I actually studied software engineering in Delft in the Netherlands. I have a degree in information science, but I also like business and marketing and creative endeavors such as drawing and logos and design. So I have wide interests, and I do like programming. I tried being a software engineer for a while, but I was also busy with too many other things to be able to keep up as a programmer, because you really need to do that full time just to know what's going on and try the newest technologies, etc. And because I was also interested in finance and stuff, I was the obvious person to become a manager, to be the manager of the software engineering department and the sparring partner of top management. So that's how I got to be where I am now. I wrote a book on how to be agile as a manager in software organizations, and that became quite popular in the agile world. And since then, I've been speaking and writing and doing many things.
Yeah, that's very interesting. From software engineering to writer, speaker, I think it's not like a very common journey, I would say. We see, the stereotypes of program, like software engineers. It's mostly like they prefer to like sit in silence, do not speak with people, and you are like completely the opposite, I would say. Um, so we will move to the more like your work, and we will focus on the management dot three, 3.0 and leadership. And unFIX model. Can you explain the key principle of the unFIX model that you created and how leaders can use it to improve team dynamics and business outcomes?
Sure. So the idea is that I always advocated toolboxes and pattern libraries like Lego boxes. I need. I think leaders and managers and others need options, choice for how to organize their business. I don't like the idea of static frameworks that offer a rigid structure that you need to implement and where you can certify people for the correct interpretation of the framework and so on. I think that doesn't work well in a complex, dynamic environment. It is better to allow people to create their own way of working with mini solutions. That is what the patterns are about in the unFIX model. So unFIX is basically a pattern language with lots of suggestions for what you could do, team structures and goal setting and reteaming options, etc. And that makes it more complicated because people still have to well, like with Lego, create their own thing. You don't get a ready-made solution off the shelf. So it is easier for people to implement a framework, but I also think the failure rate is quite high with framework implementations. It is better to just design your own way of working around you and your business.
And you mentioned very important thing to focus also like on people. And I think your management, I think from my research and like experience on your management 3.0 approach, it focuses on people, on empowering teams and creating a better human experience. What were like the kind of core motivations to creating that approach, but also like what were the biggest shifts you see in leadership thanks to your approach and thanks to that approach you created?
Well, I think as a former software engineer, I have always been an unconventional manager. I have never worn a suit and tie. I have always been more creative in how I approached management itself. I saw that as a creative challenge. I came up with new practices that I tried with my teams, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. And that was a very different way, apparently, of organizing and managing a company that was I'm rather unconventional still as a business person, and it seemed that resonated very well with the agile crowd because traditional management is not what we need in an innovative, creative environment. We want the managers themselves also to be creatives, basically, and run experiments with the organization in terms of organizational structure or goal setting or whatever the things that they are responsible for. Um, and I think I was sort of the obvious candidate with my wide interests and also my creative angle as an illustrator and designer, etc. So yeah, it came naturally to me to manage things in a different way, and that opened the eyes for other people. Once I wrote a book about how I did things, then that was apparently quite successful and enough for people to try this such an approach themselves.
Because it seemed more like, like work started to seem like fun rather than just a duty. I think in Management 3.0, you also showed the power of like collaboration and bringing joy to the workplace. And very often, I think we forget about that kind of piece that work also needs to be sometimes playful a little bit, sometimes like bringing us very often bringing us joy, for us to be engaged, for employees to be engaged, and that's a powerful shift that you make. And stopping on that topic of the shifts, um, do you see like any like big shifts in leadership over the next decade and how leaders can prepare for that?
For sure, that's something that is top of mind right now. I'm actively doing research into this. It is the impact that AI is going to have on management, leadership, organizational design, and so on. So one example is that with AI, we expect there to be far fewer managers in the future because an important part of the management job is to work with information and make decisions and just move information around in the organization or make decisions based on information. Well, that's what AIs can do to some extent. So a lot of the mundane management tasks, gathering information, talking about it, making decisions about the information, a lot of that can be delegated to algorithms. And we see that already in certain kinds of companies, such as delivery companies, people deliver packages, Amazon, Uber, etc., where they manage their workforce with algorithms, basically. So people do not have the traditional direct report anymore, where they have a weekly conversation, a one-on-one conversation with. That is disappearing, and I think, yeah, the rise of the age of AI is only going to accelerate this. Entire layers of middle management will be disappearing, in my opinion.
You mentioned like AI can gather information, transfer information, and that's how lead managers can be replaced by algorithm. But isn't leadership more than just transferring information and gathering, let's say, requirements?
Yes, so I'm not saying management as an activity is going to disappear. I say that management, to a certain extent, can be delegated to artificial intelligence, and that means that you need fewer managers to actually do that job, to actually to take care of those management activities, and those managers will have to work collaboratively with AIs to do that job well. So an example is Hire, Chinese company. I always often talked about them. I've been there 10, 12 years ago. They completely remove the middle management layers and turn those managers into CEOs of micro enterprises. That means they were still managers, but of small business units, and they had to collaborate horizontally with each other through contracting. And those contracts were signed on the blockchain, etc. So a lot of this is automated. That means that instead of the 10 middle management layers that they had, there are only 2 layers that have survived, and the other 8 have disappeared. So yes, there are still managers, but far fewer than there were before, because a significant chunk of the work is now embedded in algorithms. And I think Chinese companies are, some of them at least, Haier and Alibaba and Tencent, they are quite advanced in how they do this, from what I've heard, and Western companies are sure to follow. I think it's quite inevitable.
Hmm. And you know, if managers want to be in that like successful 2 out of 10 that you mentioned, for example, like from 10, there was like a reduced to 2, let's say, leaders or managers being in that company, what can make you like stand out that you are the chosen one? Do you have any theory around that?
Well, make sure that you're really, really good at working with AI, because as many people say, you will not be replaced by AI. You will be replaced by someone who's good at working with AI, because yeah, there are still managers. There in organizations, only fewer of them. So the ones who are good at working with AI, those will be the ones that are remaining. And let's be honest, there are plenty of people in middle management positions that aren't even interested in being managers. I mean, it's just they got into, somehow ended up in those jobs, but they would happily do something else, like product management or project management, or whatever. Um, Lead their own micro enterprise as a CEO, etc. So there are many more options for traditional middle management.
And in the era of AI, why do you think, or is agility still important for companies in the era of AI, or maybe it's even more important right now? And how do leaders can actually keep up in such environment?
It is even more important than it was in the past, because AI is only going to accelerate everything. A nice example of that is, as many people have pointed out, with traditional agile, if I can call it that, we're supposed to have a conversation with the customer, maybe with a customer on site, or with an invited customer with a demo on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to show the results. At least a human representative of the customer should give feedback on what the product team has done. Well, in the future, and in some teams this is already happening, AIs can give that feedback to a large extent. They are available 24/7. They're available all the time. It is possible to create mock versions of your typical clients, 100 different versions of users, for example, and let them, those digital agents, try out the new iteration of a product and give feedback on it. That means you can accelerate much faster. You don't have to wait for the availability of a customer anymore, which can be super annoying to arrange. You just iterate as fast as the AI can give you feedback. And then you still want to meet with the real human customer, of course, at some point, but that can be delayed. You can do that maybe once per month instead of every week. So 80-90% of the issues can be found with algorithms. And you leave that last 10%, the really important conversation, you postpone that until the real customer is finally available. I compare that with my book writing process. For example, as you pointed out, I released a novel just a couple of months ago, and I used multiple AIs to check the quality of my writing. I used Grammarly, I used Pro Writing Aid, and I used ChatGPT. That's 4 different AI systems. And only after those 3 uh, um, models found and reported all the issues, and that I then fixed, then I went to a human copy editor. And that human copy editor said, "Wow, the quality of this text is amazing. I rarely get it at this level. This is pretty good." So he was quite happy because that meant he had more time to look at the really important stuff that AIs, algorithms are not able to see, like an inconsistency in how I use words on different pages, for example. That is very difficult, or there's not easy for AIs to catch that kind of errors. And there's more that a human would be able to see still. So I don't bother the copy editor with the boring stuff that is beneath his quality. Why not use algorithms to do that? And it's the same with customers. Why do we ask customers to give feedback every week if 80% can be caught with AIs? But once we do make that shift, we're going to accelerate much faster. And that was your question. Is agility still important? Hell yes, even more important than ever, because the cycles are going to speed up even more. And at some point, we're not going to call it agile anymore. Who cares about the word agile or agility? It's just really fast iteration of product design and product development, and that's the future.
That's very interesting what you mentioned about also like how you use generative LLMs, generative AI to um, to enhance your writing process and to actually um, get rid of mundane tasks, for example, because you're thinking, for example, on about the editor, also about the readers, and to like reduce their workload and to let them focus um, on the really important parts. You actually took like a proactive approach to like do it, like do self editing, let's say, before, and that leads me to the topic of neurodiversity, actually, because that's one of the topics I'm really excited to explore today. One part because it's like a very kind of also like new topic for me, but very close to my day to day. And you also you've been you've been open about being like slightly autistic and embracing neurodiversity. So how can neurodiversity be an advantage in today's workplace, and how can companies, managers, leaders embrace it? Or how we can embrace it if we know that we're neurodiverse?
Well, I've always said that it's about cognitive diversity that matters on teams. There's people thinking differently, having different kinds of brains when it comes to problem solving and creativity. And there it helps if you have not only people from different cultures and different genders, but also people who are on the spectrum or other forms of neurodiversity added into the mix. It just gives you a wider range of insights on the thing that you're doing. And yeah, I did a couple of tests, three tests, just a year or so ago, that each three said, "Yep, you're on the spectrum." It's not an official certificate that I have, but it sort of confirms everything that I always suspected. And my husband said, "Yep, I knew it." No surprise. And my friends as well. So, okay, I will just take it for granted. Apparently, I am slightly on the spectrum. Good. I'm sort of proud of it. It makes me special. Makes me different from other people, less boring, as I sometimes say. And yeah, sometimes that can be an advantage. I can have laser focus on things. I see things that other people don't see. Like I look at a text and I immediately see that there between two words there are two spaces. It takes me a fraction of a second to spot that. Other people don't see that there are two spaces between a word to the words. So I am good at editing stuff. It also means that some things I do badly because, for example, it has happened that people ask me to give feedback on their text, on their writing. But when there are simple mistakes in it, simple spelling errors, I cannot give feedback because the spelling errors are like glaring signs distracting me from everything else. So I just send it back. I said, look, first pass it through Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid, whatever, before bothering me, because I am unable to read a text without being distracted by all the stupid mistakes that you could have caught if you simply took a bit of effort. So I don't do that because my brain is not wired like that. I cannot ignore the spelling mistakes. Then I start fixing those. So yeah, it has benefits and it has drawbacks, and it's good to be aware of that, of yourself, of what you do well and what you don't do well. I can have really good focus on things, but as I always say, the building that I am sitting in could be on fire and I wouldn't even notice because I am so caught up in my work. And That's well, as I said, it's awareness of what you can bring to the equation on a team. That I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wondering if there is also this part of you which is like very direct, um, in case of like the empathy is like slightly hidden, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's two things. That's one because I'm Dutch, and the Dutch are already famous for their directness and straightforwardness. Some people would call it bluntness. And that all of that is true. But then on top of that, with me being slightly on the spectrum, I have an additional layer of directness added into the mix.
That's very interesting and really funny because I'm on the other side of the spectrum. So I'm ADHD. So my empathy is, yeah, my empathy and a kind of even like sensitivity is way on the other side of the spectrum. So I'm wondering how our collaboration, on a team would look like if we wouldn't know that about ourselves, for example, yeah, and we wouldn't have that conversation before. Um, and I think because of lack of self-awareness, and the lack of understanding the neurodiversity, many individuals may see their differences as barriers. So, do you have any practical advice to turn those perceived limitations into strengths, both personally and professionally?
Um, No, I think it's just being aware of how you and other people are wired. That means that you can cover each other for each other's weaknesses. I've learned a long time ago. I think it's also mentioned in my first book that you should focus on other people's strengths and not on their weaknesses. I remember one person on one of my teams. We knew he was really, really good at programming, and whenever there was a calamity, we knew that he was the person to give that problem to because he would fix it in minutes. But he was also very, very difficult to handle, and that was a package. It was yeah, it was one and the same thing. The reason that he was difficult to handle was also because he was really good at at certain things. So we just focus on the good stuff and say, okay, well, whenever there's a problem, let's give it to him, and we try to make sure that him being difficult a person every now and then that was covered by other people who were sort of the buffer between that person and the rest of the organization. Okay, well, let's not have him direct give him direct access to the rest of the organization because he's just going to aggravate everyone who doesn't understand what kind of person he is. So the team took care of him, and I think that is a nice example of covering each other's weaknesses so that you can focus on the strengths.
And how to create that kind of environment? Because my next question was supposed to be about how organizations can turn this neurodiversity and the talents that we have into strength rather than seeing this as a limitation. But it seems like a certain organizational mindset shift. What's your view on that?
Yes, well, I suppose that's part of Management 3.0. That's one of the things that I brought to the table, that we need to embrace people for who they are and focus on the strengths rather than their weaknesses. And I'm not the only one. There are plenty of other leadership experts who say the same thing. So that is the leadership part of management. I always say that management is leadership and governance. There's two sides of the same coin. There's a lot of focus on leadership in the last couple of decades, but there's also governance. Someone still has to make the rules, the laws that everyone has to adhere to, the rules of the playbook, so to say. And that leadership part includes allowing people to shine in the areas that they're good at. What is interesting is that now, with the rise of AI, we have another opportunity, which is to delegate the things that we are not good at to the machines, who act as our co-pilots. So once we are aware that we're good at one thing but not so good at something else, we can figure out how to make our assistants, our digital assistants, do that work for us. So if you're a creative person but you don't like doing research, okay, well, delegate the research to your digital assistants. If you like the research, okay, do the research, but then let the digital assistants make all the creative options for your design. There's the same in writing. I just wrote a blog post about that a week or two ago. I know some authors, some novelists who are really good at writing beautiful prose, but they're not so good at crafting believable characters or coming up with a plot that has a good pace. So I've read a couple of books that were wonderfully written, but my God, boring, boring, boring. Nothing happened. But the prose was a delight. And vice versa. There are some authors, novelists, who are great at world building and making characters, but their prose is as if it was as written by a machine, and nothing special. So there's nothing wrong with either. It's just that I see that there are all kinds of writers, and some like this and some like that. So it is great if that you now have the option to delegate the thing that you're not good at, that you also don't like very much, to a machine who would be able to elevate it to a higher level than you could yourself. I think that's the important point, because it is shown, the research shows that AI helps the people who are worst at their job. So anyone who sucks benefits a lot from AI. Someone who's really good at their job doesn't really benefit from AI. But we all have different tasks in our job. A job is not one big chunk of a thing. There are lots of tasks, and some tasks we are good at, and some tasks we are not so good at. Okay, so delegate the things we are not good at, so that at least we get better overall with our co-pilots. I think that is the new thing that has emerged since a year or so, that we were able to do that.
That's actually amazing how, we can use algorithms right now in machines to enhance our capabilities. And I will move now to the high performance teams, or like teams in general, teams topic. So you've worked with teams around the world. What are like the top three practical strategies for keeping teams motivated and, what is most important, engaged?
I think I wrote entire books on that. So how do I summarize that
Like
to,
three,
to
just
three?
three.
Well, just a couple of things that come first to my mind. One is, let them choose their own work that they want to do, within reason, because there are shitty tasks that need to be done in an organization. Someone still has to do them, but then I prefer that someone volunteers to pick up those tasks, and then the others recognize that person, and say, yay, thank you so much, thumbs up. So the appreciation from the others is then already motivation for doing the shitty job. And then, of course, next time you expect somebody else is going to do that, because you don't want the only one to always be the one who does that job. That is much more motivating than a manager uh, uh, um, giving tasks to everyone. And we see that now also in new ideas, or relatively new concepts, such as swarming, which has been on the rise in the agile community as well, where we have teams swarming to the objectives, to the user stories that they would like to do, dividing them among each other. That is highly motivational. A second one would be, let them work wherever they want. I do not agree with companies that demand that people move back to the workplace, where they say that the work is the office. Basically, I have worked for 15 years already with people all over the planet, from Poland to Brazil, and from the Netherlands to China. And that works, and it means you get a different kind of people. You get, by default, a more diverse group of people than you would be able to get if they would all live in the same city. And it is incredibly motivating for people if they're able to create their own work schedules, where, like today, I just before this podcast interview, I came from the city council because I picked up my ID card. I always had a passport, but only recently I figured out that a small ID card is actually handier when I travel within Europe. So I would not be able to do that easily if I was employed at a company that expected me to be in the office, and then I have to go to the city council after 5, hoping that they're still open. It's just annoying. So I don't have the commutes. I can work anytime I want. I love working on the weekends because it's nice and quiet. And then during the week, I take breaks for walks and running, and it all blends into each other. I don't have a work balance separation. It is all work life integration for me. And I don't want anything else anymore. Same with the people that I work with. They never want to go back to an office situation. So that will be number two. Number three, you wanted three, right?
I
uh,
wanted free.
yeah, yeah. Number three is well, one thing that comes to mind. I involve them in how much everyone gets paid. I frankly, I don't want that to be my problem as a manager. I just show them this is the budget, this is what we have. So let's talk. How do we divide that among each other? And sometimes this becomes a salary formula. Other times it becomes some kind of peer-to-peer bonus system or whatever. But that saves me from having an argument with every person because everyone always thinks that they're underpaid. 8 out of 10 people think that they deserve more. And that's an incredibly annoying situation to be in as a manager because you cannot pay 8 out of 10 people more because there is no more. The budget is what it is. So let them have that conversation with each other. You delegate that problem. And that also makes them co-owners. It makes them responsible. And I have very good results with that. So that was three.
Yeah, that was free. And to summarize, so let them choose the work, let them work from whatever they want, and involve them into the budget split, let's
In the
say. Hmm.
conversation, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting approach. That leads me to the next question about safe, because the safe environment is very often like key to unlock creativity, to unlock high performance. Um, Actually, on the same conference that you were the main speaker, Suleiman spoke about high performing teams and like safety and the safe environment. So, from your perspective, what can leaders do to build a culture where people feel safe, supported, and empowered to do their best work?
I think we sort of already covered that. If you give them the autonomy to work wherever they want and come up with their own team agreement, etc., then that is part of creating a safe environment. And if you involve them in conversation discussions and other things that normally a manager would decide for everyone, that creates a safe environment. And then there's the feedback culture. Anyone is allowed to say anything, voice their opinions on whatever happens without being punished for that. That is also part of a safe environment.
And about the feedback and no punishment, this also is connected to kind of conflicts and tough conversations, because feedback is very often like a tough conversation. I mean, you need to tell someone that he's doing something, well, maybe not so well, or he could improve, he could do something better, or you provide a positive feedback. That's not very developing for anyone. We know that. So, how leaders can do that while keeping like trust and respect to the team members, to the team cohesion.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not going to claim that I'm good at it. One of my weaknesses is perhaps being too obvious in my criticism of how other people do their work. But I know what I should be doing, and that is simply observing what is happening. Uh, like when someone makes well, something that happened multiple times a year ago. Someone made um, uh, spelling errors, grammatical errors in social media communication, on LinkedIn and whatever. And I think, I mean, come on, how hard is it to just use a spell checker before you post something? That's just it's not difficult. Do it. And when I observe it the first time, hey, I think next time please use Grammarly or another spell checker. And then it happened the second time and the third time, yeah, then I got really annoyed and I let it show that the person is simply not paying attention. Come on, it's not so difficult. So, but it starts with making an observation and say, hey, I see that something is not as it should be. This is how it makes me feel. Uh, it doesn't show quality of our company communication if there is simple language errors in it that doesn't look good, that makes me feel embarrassed for our brand because of something that you posted. Could you please fix that? That is a relatively neutral way of phrasing it. It's called nonviolent communication. And this is what I see. This is how it makes me feel. And then you make a request of what the person could do better. If the person doesn't learn from it, yeah, then I fail to apply nonviolent communication after 3 times, and I go
And then
seriously.
you apply violent communication.
Yes, then it comes sort of quasi-violent. Yes, I plead guilty, but hey, that person's own fault, in my opinion. I also offered a feedback wrap, which is very, very similar in one of my books, which follows basically the same pattern as nonviolent communication, but it is making a distinction between what you observe that nobody can deny. Everyone sees that there are spelling errors in a blog post. Nobody can say no, this is not true, and then you don't attack the person. You say there is something wrong with what they produced, which is a fact, and then you say how that makes you feel, which is also fact. I feel agitated or embarrassed about the brand because of that blog post that is now online. That is a feeling. Nobody can deny my feelings. And then you leave it to the other person to, if they're willing to solve that problem or help you address that. And that's pretty successful, this approach.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. So first, patience, nonviolent communication, and then, um, well, sometimes we need to be a little bit more direct, I guess. Um, and as we're wrapping up our conversation, for aspiring or current leaders, what's one practical thing that they can start doing today to better motivate their teams and create more inclusive and innovative work environment?
Well, I would say, given the developments that we see around us, um, delegate the use or the exploration with AI to all team members. Don't try as a manager to predict in which ways artificial intelligence can be beneficial to the organization, to the team, because you'd be surprised at all the use cases that team members themselves are able to find. I am myself on a regular basis surprised by the things that I can let ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the others do for me, things that I have never predicted. Just yesterday, for example, I am figuring out how to do Amazon advertising, which is a new thing that I would like to learn, how to promote books on Amazon. There's whole courses and etc. For that, of course. But one thing that you need to know is for the book that you would like to promote, what are the keywords? What are the genres, the categories, the keywords, etc., that you would like to use for that book? And also, who are your comparable authors? That is, authors who write books very similar to yours, because you want to target their readers with your advertising. And then I thought, wait a minute, I can just give my whole book to an AI and ask it to read it for me and then give me that input. So I did. And then within 10, 15 seconds, I had a whole list of keywords from ChatGPT and from Gemini. I had a whole list of comparable authors who write books very similar to mine, including names that I had never heard of. And that was interesting. And it takes ChatGPT just 10 seconds to read a novel of 150,000 words. And then it can see the patterns and say, okay, well, this author also writes science fiction with humor and diverse characters, etc. And well, I give this as an example of a use case that I had not predicted up to a week ago, but it comes to my mind. I try it out. I'm so happy because this saves me hours of work doing the keyword analysis and the comparable author research and so on. That is something that I came up with because of the work that I do on a daily basis. I stumbled upon this use case, and you need to let team members do the same thing. Just give them AI tools and tell them, try to shave hours of your job in any way you can. What can you delegate to the AI? What can you let them do for you that I cannot even predict as a manager? And then you will see probably the best use cases and innovative ideas emerge from that.
What upcoming projects or personal adventures you're most excited about?
Oh wow! Well, there is a project that I'm working on that I cannot tell you anything about because it's still
Oh
top
no.
secret. Yes, I'm so sorry. But my team with the unFIX company, we're working on launching something new per January. We're collaborating with the Manchester Theatre team, which is the previous team that I work with. They're still good friends, of course, and there's same and similar shareholders behind them. So we're going to work on we're working on something that we would like to launch in January. And that has that excites me, except for, as I told you, the work that I now do on figuring out how AI changes our ways of working. That is for me top of mind. The fact that middle management will disappear to some extent is expected. Teams get smaller, up to teams of just one or two people with a whole bunch of digital assistants around them. There will be more reteaming, dynamic teaming on the fly. And as I gave you the example of customers being replaced with digital agents for faster feedback on products, that changes business processes completely. There's a lot of stuff that's super exciting. I am now actually building a course about that. 25 things to take into account, trends to follow as managers and leaders. And fingers crossed, I hope it will be ready within a week or two, at least before the end of the year. For sure, it will be available. And it's a very exciting time that we live in, I think.
Yeah, very exciting time. And wishing you a lot of success with your top secret project and your course. Hopefully, it will be ready soon. And for our listeners who want to connect with you or learn more about your course, about your work, where they can find you online.
Well, the easiest is to go to unFIX.com. Super simple, just 5 letters, unFIX.com. That's where you can find me and my team. There's a community at community.unFIX.com. And the courses are launched there in case someone is interested in new ways of working in the age of AI. That is what the title of the course will be. Should be available within a week or two after the recording of this podcast. And more stuff will appear, is on the horizon, because I'm developing lots of new content in the next couple of months.
Okay. So great. So I will put the links to your website and to your LinkedIn probably into the episode description. And I really wanted to thank you for sharing your insights on leadership, management, and future of management with AI, actually. Thank you, Jurgen, for our conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Doing It My Way by Beata Matras. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to subscribe. Remember, this podcast is a dynamic journey and your feedback is very welcomed. Connect with me on social media. I would like to hear your thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions. And stay tuned for upcoming episodes. And until next time, keep doing it your way.